Everyone loves a good story with a hero or a heroine in it. Someone who stands alone against injustice. It is a theme that permeates our literature, all the best of movies. You think about those movies, right? The Patriot, Shawshank Redemption, Harry Potter, The Gladiator, Star Wars, The Hunger Games, anything with The Rock in it, Standing tough, standing alone, standing strong. We like those stories because it's admirable, it's heroic, and somewhere, I think deep within our hearts, we wonder if we were faced with the same challenge, could we stand, Could we win? Doing the right thing when it costs something. It's the essence of a true hero. And when you find a man or a woman who will risk doing what's right regardless of personal cost, even if it will lose them everything, then you've discovered someone worth following. We shall be following such a champion today and in the weeks to come as we look at the life and the times of Daniel. They really should make a movie about this. Dare to be a Daniel. And we shall see all throughout the book of Daniel a hero in life and faith. I think Daniel is very relevant for us today, and he is someone worth watching. The story begins in 605 BC as the armies of the Babylonian Empire laid siege against the city of Jerusalem. And when the city fell, the Babylonians, which was the superpower of all the world, they storm in, and in customary fashion, they round up the brightest and the best among the royalty of Jerusalem, and they march them off to their capital city. Now, among those who are taken are 4 teenagers: Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. You've heard of them maybe? Imagine that, you 15-year-olds, carted off as a slave to a foreign land. Daniel, he's 15 years old. Lost his freedom, his home, his culture, his status, his family, all of it gone. Daniel's own name is taken away from him and substituted with a Babylonian name, Belteshazzar, which is named after one of their gods. And he is assimilated. He is immersed into a new culture and a new philosophy, a new language. He's taught a new lifestyle. He's taught that there's more than one God. He is suddenly plunged into this very different and very loose society. I bet our college kids can relate. Now, just as an aside, also, a little commercial here, please come and hear 2 fantastic presentations from Professor Brad Alice, free of charge, right here at Messiah. They begin at 7 o'clock, 2-night deal. May 17th, big questions, biblical answers. I went to the National Youth Gathering last summer. I thought his presentation was the best of them all. It was fantastic, and so I had to get him to come to Messiah. And then on May 18th, the ABCs of defending your faith. Well, let's get back to Daniel. Tough times. Daniel is living in this brand new reality. Brand new world to deal with. Everything's upside down. New literature, new language, new philosophy, new set of standards. Daniel and friends went through a crash course curriculum of brainwashing, lasting for 3 years, so that he and the others could graduate into the government of Babylon in order to be of some future service to their king. Imagine that, your whole life turned upside down for the worse. How do you react? How do you survive? How do you behave in a situation like that? I'll tell you, if I had been Daniel, I would have been more than tempted to spend all of my time and energy crabbing about all that was taken away from me and complaining about how tough I've got it and worried about all the things I couldn't control and feeling sorry for myself, maybe even blaming God for these circumstances that he put me in. But if you read the book, you'll find that Daniel doesn't do any of that. Dan is the man. Read those first 7 verses of chapter 1. We read the first 5 just moments ago. You'll see that it's King Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians calling all the shots. They take over Israel, right? They take away some of the sacred objects out of Jerusalem. They grab the best citizens who have the most potential. They're in charge of the program. They're running the show now. And then you get to verse 8, and it says this: "But Daniel determined that he would not defile himself by eating the king's food or drinking the king's wine." He determined, he resolved in his own heart, come what may, through it all, no matter what, he is going to honor God. And the way he goes about it, it's kind of interesting because he doesn't protest. He doesn't, have some big rally. He doesn't, fight that way. This is a quiet rebellion, but it's a positive rebellion. It's proactive. He didn't just sit there. He chose to make a move. He chose integrity and to be steadfast in his commitment to God. In summary, I'll give it to you. 1, Daniel knew what he believed. Do you know what you believe? Do you know what's right? Do you know what's wrong? Daniel knew what he believed. Secondly, he knew who he believed in. And then thirdly, he trusted. He trusted and he made a move by faith. He lived it out. Now, we shall see this over and over and over again, all throughout the movie of Daniel. It's a recurring theme throughout. Daniel, he's faced with a tough decision. And then we see Daniel challenged, and then we see him stand firm, we see him triumph, and then guess what? The whole thing starts all over again with a brand new challenge. Today's challenge is a food challenge, which might seem like no big deal. For Daniel, eat the king's food, drink the king's. What's the big deal? It's a small concession. It's a small compromise. And Daniel would say that's the problem. And what you know to be sin is just small and not that big of a deal. I'll give you an example. There's two teenagers. They go to their dad and they want to go to the theater to watch a movie that all their friends have seen. Everybody in the whole wide world has seen it, and they're the only two people on earth who have not seen this movie, and it's trashy, of course. And so dad goes on the internet and does the review kind of a thing, and he looks all the stuff up, and he goes, no way am I giving you money to go see that. And, Dad, why not? Come on, what a ripoff, they complain. And then the dad, of course, has to come back and say, here's why. Because that language, I'm not paying money for you to hear new words like that and the nudity and the immorality in it, not just the gross. There's so many better things you should be spending your money on, blah, blah, blah. But, Dad, it's just a small part in the movie. That's what our friends who've seen it, they told us. The movie's 2 hours long, Dad, and these are just a couple of minutes. It's totally small compared to the big. It doesn't really matter. My answer is no. That's my final answer. Done. Finished. You're not going to watch that trash. End of discussion. And the two teenagers walk away dejectedly into the TV room. They slump down on the couch. They mutter under their breath about, this and that. And they sulk. They watch TV. And it's not too much later that they smell the wonderful aroma of brownies baking in the oven. And the two teenagers there, they look at one another, and they're like, oh, Dad must be feeling guilty about not letting us go. And so he's going to try to make it up to us. Nice try, old man. About a half hour passed, and sure enough, here comes Dad with a plate of brownies fresh from the oven, with which he offered to his children. They each took one, and the father said, oh, man, before you eat, I've got to tell you something, kids. I love you. I do. I love you. That's why I made you these brownies. They're for you. They're special. They're double chocolate. Brownies indeed look great, and the kids are ready to dig in. But the father continued his speech. He said, I want to be perfectly honest with you. He said, I got to tell you, there's one ingredient that's usually not found in brownies. It's a very small amount. It wouldn't even matter. It's insignificant compared to the rest of the mix, You won't even taste it. It's organic. In fact, I found it in the backyard. I had to retrieve it with a pooper scooper. But hey, it's so small. It's just a little bit. It really doesn't matter. Both teens instantly dropped their brownies on the plate, looked at their fingers, got gross, and they got the point. The Apostle Paul said this to the Corinthians, don't you know that a little bit of yeast works through the whole batch of dough? Get rid of that little yeast so that you may be a new batch without yeast as you really are. Daniel determined that he would not defile himself by eating the king's food or drinking the king's wine. The text doesn't tell us why the food would somehow defile Daniel. I don't know. Maybe it was a violation of some ceremonial law. Maybe it was food that had been offered to idols first. Maybe it wasn't kosher. Who knows? I don't know. That's not really the point. Daniel knew that this would go against God. He was not going to defile himself. So he knew what he was talking about. Then he trusted that God's going to come through. And then he lived it out. Now, this rejection of the king's food and drink, this was a big risk, believe it or not, because Nebuchadnezzar was an A-class jerk. And that's putting it lightly. Give you an example. Once there was a puppet king named Zedekiah who tried to rebel against Nebuchadnezzar. It didn't work out so well. And so Nebuchadnezzar had Zedekiah come in with all his sons. And so he set it up like this. He had Zedekiah's sons killed before Zedekiah, and then he ripped out Zedekiah's eyes. So that would be the last thing he saw, would be the death of his sons. So when I say, like, he was kind of a bully, John Ortberg says it like this. He says, you've heard of leaders with a hands-on or a hands-off, management style. Nebuchadnezzar had a heads-off management style, You think your boss is tough. But when Nebuchadnezzar terminated people, he terminated people. So this is a big risk, actually, for Daniel. Because it was the king said, you will eat this food, you will drink this wine. Daniel, through the butler kind of a thing, proposes a challenge, a 10-day challenge. He says, let's make a comparison. Allow me and my friends, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, everyone else will eat the fine food, and we're going to eat just nothing but vegetables, and we'll drink water for 10 days, and we'll compare which diet is better. And then they prayed, oh, come on, God, come on. And it works. Daniel chapter 1:15 reports the results this way. At the end of 10 days, they, Daniel and friends, looked healthier and better nourished than any of the young men who ate the royal food. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. God came through, and he honored their commitment. Daniel and buddies knew that no matter what, there is a God who is in charge. There is a ruler of my life. He is the source of all blessing. God protected them, and he gave Daniel this special gift in which he could understand visions and dreams. And this gift is going to come into play all throughout the rest of the book. Daniel chapter 2, in fact, begins like this. In the 2nd year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His mind was troubled. He could not sleep. And so the king called all the magicians, the enchanters, the sorcerers, the astrologers, and he said, tell me what I dreamed. Man, tell me what I dreamed or I will cut you to pieces, actually is what he said. That's a tough day at work. Never go into the astrology business. It's tough. Tell me what I dreamed, then interpret it, or I'll cut you to pieces. And of course, these guys, they don't know what they're talking about. And they're looking at each other, they're like, oh man, gotta go home and tell the wife all that. And in comes Daniel, and because he has this ability from God to interpret dreams, he tells the king what the dream was and what it meant. Here is an artist's rendition of the dream. It is a statue, this giant, dazzling, skyscraping statue. The head, which looked just like Nebuchadnezzar, is made out of gold. The chest and the arms are of silver, the belly and the thighs are of bronze, the legs are made out of iron, and the feet are made partly of iron and partly of clay. Daniel told the king, while you watched, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were broken to pieces at the same time and became like chaff on a threshing floor in the summer. The wind swept them all away without leaving a trace. But the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. The statue represents the kingdoms of the earth, the powerhouse of Babylon, and then in historical succession, those world powers to come. It's an idol representing human commerce and culture and rule and power and human achievement and everything humans use to glorify themselves. But the main point is not the statue. The main point is the rock. What smashed the statue was a stone cut out not by human hands. It was from God. Although it is less earthly value than the other materials, the stone is ultimately the most powerful of them all. The dream had been Nebuchadnezzar's wake-up call to humility. Nebuchadnezzar was given a chance to change his conception of God. Tim Keller writes that as a pagan, Nebuchadnezzar would have been a pluralist. There are many, many gods, many supernatural forces all over the world in control. He had not believed that there was one permanent, all-powerful lawgiver to whom everyone was accountable, including himself. He was being told that now there's one supreme God who was sovereign and judge to whom he was now responsible for using his power and his rule. Nebuchadnezzar, believe it or not, got the message. He accepted it. And that is amazing. The most powerful man in the whole world got down on his knees in humility and confessed that God is Lord of all kings. See, Nebuchadnezzar had taken personal credit for his rise to power. And now he got the message through this dream, and he began to humble himself in his false views about many gods. And God, they all started changing, but the changes didn't go very deep. More intervention by God will be necessary. Stay tuned. More to come on that in the weeks ahead. Well, let's bring it on home. So what? What's it mean for me, Schley? Nice story, very interesting, thank you, got it, but what's it mean for me? Well, I tell you, dare to be a Daniel. Live heroically by knowing what you believe and trusting in who you believe. We live in a civilization. We live in a culture that is putting many, many choices in front of us. There are many to choose from. So many different gods out there to follow. So many different choices and philosophies. Stand strong. Quoting the Apostle Paul, I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes. Be not ashamed. Don't be ashamed. The whole rest of the world could be telling you it's something different. Stand. Stand strong. There is a rock, not cut from human hands. It's from God. It is God. He's the stone the builders rejected which has become the capstone, the mountain that fills the whole world. I'm not ashamed of the gospel. For it is the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes, first for the Jews, then the Gentiles. For in the gospel a righteousness from God is revealed, a righteousness that is by faith. From first to last, just as it's written, the righteous will live by faith. You get it? Live by faith. By faith. God is in control. He is in charge. Sometimes it doesn't look that way. Sometimes it looks like it's Babylon all over the place and everyone else is winning, but Christ and his church stand strong, stay true in high school, in college, in your workplace, in your home, in the nursing home, when you're like, is God even listening? Is God, nothing's going right, on and on. Nothing's working out. Is God really in charge? It seems in America, that everyone else has the upper hand. God is sovereign. He sets up kings, and he can take them down too. Your call is to be a Daniel and to stand strong knowing what you believe. You got to know what you believe. You have to trust who you believe in, and then you just get out there in that world and love it. In the name of Jesus, stand strong. You might have to stand alone at times, but you're never alone because he's with you always. You know how it ends, right? Have you read the back of the book? It's another dream picture. The revelation. Guess what? The Rock wins. The Rock wins. Jesus is the ultimate hero. Jesus is the perfect Daniel. That's what Daniel's pointing to. He's pointing to Jesus. Daniel's just a little snippet of Jesus. Jesus came to a place that was not his home. He came to an altogether different location. God dwelled among us. God as servant. God as captive. God on a cross. It's there. He stood tough and strong and alone. Oh, he could have compromised. Oh, the devil gave him plenty of choices to give in. Just a little here, just a little there. But he stood strong and tough. No matter what, even though the whole world was shouting at him, he did the right thing at great personal cost him everything. God in a grave, but he smashed that tomb of death to pieces. We celebrate the victory every Easter, every Sunday. He paid for your sin, the big ones and the little ones, and everyone in between. Jesus was put to the ultimate test. Live a perfect life. And he passed the test. And you know how God honored that? By blessing you. Yeah. Talk about wonderfully unfair for us. In a good way, right? It's so unfair. It's so awesome. God blessed you because Jesus was righteous. And he made you righteous because you're connected with him. That means you've already passed the test because you're with Christ. You passed the test. God has blessed you with a gift, a righteousness from God that's totally by faith. That's how you're walking. You're walking by faith. So live, righteous ones, by faith. Get out in that world and live it by faith. You're like, I don't know how it's going to work out. This don't make sense. It doesn't make, it seems like this way and the other. But you walk and live by faith. God is in control. You can trust him. Follow him. God knows what he's doing. Determine in your heart, no matter where you go and live by faith. Amen. And may the grace of God and the peace of God be yours as you know Jesus and as you trust him and as you stand strong now and forevermore. Amen.